Good morning. So today's title, subject area that we're going to talk around is hiring staff. I think particularly when you're starting out, you're a consultant, you work for yourself, you've not employed staff in the past, or you're just thinking about doing it in a smarter way. And believe me, I've learned the hard way. So this is, let me just tell you a little story. So I used to have staff and everything that goes with that. And it was like a hungry baby. So you're running around like a crazy lunatic, trying to find new clients. And at the end of the month, you've paid as much as you would have done as another mortgage for the office. And then you've got all the wages, national insurance, insurances, sick pay, blah, blah, blah. And it can be exhausting. So I think particularly in this day and age when we've got so much access to amazing software, there are lots of benefits for outsourcing the work. And as I mentioned yesterday, when you're working in your zone of genius and you are the creator, because what people pay for are your skills and your expertise, there is absolutely no reason why you should be spending hours on all the fiddly little bits and pieces. I think there's an argument for knowing what the capabilities are of software as like a broad brushstroke, but you don't need to know all the detail and you don't need to obsess about things. So things need to look professional, so you might need to employ a graphic designer. You'll need to connect your landing page perhaps to your website. You don't necessarily need to, that's another point. You could have it as a standalone bit of kit. And even I don't know how to connect the coding, the website coding, to the back end of my website. I need to employ someone to do that, and I think I'm pretty savvy at tech stuff. You don't need to be answering all the questions that come in. You could employ a VA, a virtual assistant, for doing the follow-up stuff. You don't need to make a PowerPoint presentation look beautiful. You could employ a VA who's got a graphic design skill to do that. And I think if rather than employing general practitioners, and this is another lesson that I've learned, employing general practitioners to do everything, find specific people who have the right skill set for doing that one piece of work. A graphic designer, a web developer, someone who's great at CRM systems. So we're going to look at that and be specific. So then your job really is just to manage the output. And it feels so great when you've paid somebody a minimal amount of money and they come back and the piece of work that they've done is beautiful and perhaps it just needs a couple of tweaks. Because they're an expert in that particular area, they've done it much better than you could ever do. So that's what the education is today really, is outsourcing it and get someone else to do it. It's so worth the stressful hours that you're tying yourself up in knots for. So I've used 3 different platforms, and again there are lots of bits of software out there. But I'm just going to talk about the 3 that I've used and the pros and cons of using them. So the first one is a website called Fiverr. So it's Fiverr, and it started out, I think I probably used it maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. It was a recommendation from someone else. And the reason it got its name was because you could go onto the website and get anything that you needed for $5. Things have progressed since then, and as with all these platforms, each service provider is given a rating. I think my theory is that you get what you pay for. So I would probably It asks you for a budget, and depending on what you needed, I would put a realistic budget in place there. Do a little bit of research, but if you're just needing a little bit of something, I think Fiverr is really good for that. People will, will disagree. So I think the benefit of all these different websites that I'm telling you about now is that you can source anything from all over the world. And I'm speaking generally about this, and this is my opinion, but I think if you need techie stuff, India is a fabulous place to go for anything that's to do with software and web development. And you can get it relatively inexpensively. Now, I would look at the reviews, I would think exactly about what you need, and I would test them on a tiny little chunk of work first. Don't expect to get that for free, pay them for it, but also let them know that if they do a great job, you'll be using them again, and there's another big piece of work, or regular pieces of work come in if they do a great job for you. Be really specific about what it is that you want, and there's gonna be a download at the bottom of today's email, which is an example of how you can be specific and ask for what you need. I think the more specific you are at this stage, the better the outcome. So the second website is one called Elance, and as the name says on the tin, it's virtual freelancers. I think if I were using Elance now, it would probably be for somebody like a graphic designer and that sort of thing. Now, the one that I have used that I've had the best results from is one called Upworks. The reason I like Upworks is because it's really transparent. You can create little chunks of work. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've got a big piece of work that's maybe $300, because everything's in dollars. But you want to make sure that they're kept on track, and that you want to pay them for when they get to certain milestones, and they actually call them milestones in the piece of work. Might be a website or something, if that website's say $500, and you pay them in increments, in little bits every time they get a piece of work done, and you sign it off at that stage. They are reliant upon the good testimonial that you give them at the end to help with their rankings. So they're always going to be trying to do their best for you. I've used Upworks a few times. I really like the way that it works. There's a couple of caveats that I want to share with you, just from using these types of service providers in the past. One is that don't forget about the time delays. So I was using a lady in the Philippines for some work a couple of years back, and I found it really hard work because they were exactly the opposite end of the day to me, which meant that I've worked all day and I'm a morning person, so when it got to 5-6 o'clock in the evening, I was just like, oh, I can't do this. It's so exhausting. And the other bit of advice I would give you is always have a Skype call with them right at the beginning of the project, almost like an interview. Have some great questions for them. Ask for some examples of work that they've done in the past that's similar to yours, so that you can have a look at it and get in touch with the person that's done the work and ask them if they would recommend them and if they would use their services again. If they're not doing that, then that tells me something that is not quite right. So I think you have to be mindful of the cultural barriers, because of course we all have slightly different ways of working. And that's the payoff really for using someone that works in a different country, in a different culture. If you're looking for someone who's got great English skills, then why not use an English speaking country like America, like Canada, like South Africa, like Australia? But just be mindful of the time differences. And if it's not something that you need done ultra quick, then of course you have got a bit of luxury of time where they can pick it up and work on it whilst you're sleeping. So again, I'm going to leave the links, and I'm going to give you a download where you can use it as a template to be able to create your own job spec. And let me know how you get on. Thank you. Bye bye.